Today, we're talking about how to give your financial life a complete overhaul by essentially hacking your brain to trick it into wanting to do things that are good for you and avoiding what's not. All right, everybody, settle down. Class is in session. I'm Steve Antonioni, and if we haven't met before, I taught myself how to quit my boring old corporate job using the power of personal finance, and now I make YouTube videos to share my thoughts and experiences of how you can accomplish similar incredible things in your life as well. This fellow right here, B.F. Skinner, is going to help us reinvent our financial life in 2021. Just look at that big brain, way bigger than mine, that's for sure. This smart fella is one of the granddaddies of behavioral psychological change. And so if you're tired of spending way more money than you actually want to, or ending the year with way less money than you hoped you had, then this video can hopefully help you out. Pain and pleasure. You may have heard before that these two opposing forces are what dictate a lot of our lives. For example, take touching a hot stove. As soon as you touch it, that hurt. I'm not going to touch that again. But what if I ate something really delicious, like a slice of pizza? It hits your taste buds. That was really good. I want more of that. Pain and pleasure are the two primary forces that kind of drive us in that way and help dictate what actions are good ones for us and what actions are bad ones for us. But what if I told you that there is a way to kind of hack your brain a little bit, or it's kind of like a psychological trick to essentially make your brain think that actions that we can take that would be good for us are what will bring us pleasure and avoid pain. There's a phrase that goes something along the lines of, we are whatever we do consistently. Or put another way, we are whatever our habits are. Think of your own life right now. Think of the things that you do on a very regular basis that are habitual to you. And then think of the person that you want to be maybe 1 year into the future, 5 years into the future, or even 10 years into the future. Is that person that you want to be, are they doing those things on a habitual basis? I think the answer is, for many of us, probably not. There's a lot of things that we currently have as habits that if we picture the person that we want to be in the future, they probably aren't doing those things. So if we project our current habits out 1, 5, or 10 years into the future, who does that person look like? Is that who we want to be? How does their financial situation look? Maybe not the best. And so if you're like me, you'll probably notice that there's definitely some habits that you'd like to change, and perhaps especially financially. Way back in the 1930s, our good friend B.F. Skinner pioneered a 3-step process to create massive change in people's lives. And those 3 steps were stimulus, response, and reward. The idea is that the things that you and I do on a regular basis, our habits, are based off of incentives that are embedded in our environments. Imagine you lived in an apartment building, and about a 15-minute walk down the street, you had a grocery store. So the store is, close enough to walk to, but it's still a 30-minute round trip, not including the time that you actually spend inside the store. Now let's add something else into the mix. On the ground floor of your apartment building, there's a fast food place. Maybe that's Mickey D's, maybe that's Subway, whatever. Just insert your favorite fast food place that you find yourself eating from on a regular basis. So how likely are you going to be to go to that grocery store now? Well, it probably depends on things like maybe your eating habits, maybe you're somebody who actually likes making food at home, but I think we can all admit that by introducing fast food into our environments, we're going to go there at least occasionally because we've now been incentivized by something. We've been incentivized by convenience. It's so important to understand how subconscious incentives direct our lives, or else you won't be the one in control of it. So in our case, if we look at Skinner's model, the stimulus is the fast food being easily available to us. The response is our brain telling us to go there because it's way more inconvenient than walking to the grocery store, and the reward is a meal our taste buds like. So here's the issue. The stimulus response reward model shows how habits are reinforced. And in this case, this is actually a bad habit that's being reinforced by the incentives in our environment. So today, I'm going to show you how to use this model to reinforce good habits and then cancel out bad ones. And to do that, we'll have to move beyond the 1930s, because now fast forward into the 21st century, and there has been a lot of work done on top of that three-step model that B.F. Skinner introduced to us. And perhaps my favorite new work in this field has been done by someone by the name of James Clear, who's the author of the book Atomic Habits. And he's created a system called the 4 Laws of Behavioral Change. But before I explain the 4 laws to you, let me just take a second to explain why this works. It will be very quick. Look at this chart. What do you see? It's an exponential growth curve. That's right. That's because using the 4 laws of behavior change, we are seeking to make consistent 1% improvements in our financial habits. If we do this, our money can look like this chart. James even said it himself. Habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. We all know about compound interest, right? If you watch financial YouTube videos. Well, habits work very much the same way. A 1% improvement every day for a year results in a 37,000% gain in ourselves. 2021 is the year, my friends. So the 4 laws begin with a very important initial step, and that's the 3 layers of behavioral change. And if any of you are familiar with Simon Sinek's work, you'll notice that these 3 layers are kind of reminiscent of his golden circle idea. So basically what we have here is we have an outer layer that's represented by an outcome. We have the next inner layer, which is represented by actions, and then we have the innermost layer represented by identity. The reason why most habit changes don't work is because they work in this circle in the wrong direction. You see, they start from the outside and they work their way in. And what I mean by that is, generally people, they think of the outcome they want to achieve by starting this particular habit. So for example, if I wanted to start a running habit, I would maybe want to start it to lose weight. So they start from the objective of losing weight. They start from the outermost ring of this circle. And then they think to themselves, okay, so what actions would I now take to lose this weight? So they're going into the circle. So they think, maybe I'll start running. And then finally, we move into the innermost portion of this circle, and we think of that identity that this new action will bring us. And maybe we think now that I will be a healthy person, for example. So they're working from the outside in. They're working from outcomes to identity. But James Clear argues that this is actually the wrong way to approach habit change. The right way is to start from the inside and work your way out. The right way is to start from the identity of the person that you want to be, and then naturally the action and the outcome will follow. For example, let me put it this way and it'll be really clear. Imagine that somebody had a problem quitting drinking. So maybe one night they're at a restaurant and the waiter or waitress comes up to them and says, "Hello, can I get you something to drink?" And maybe this person says, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit." That's one option. And then option 2 is they could say, "No thanks, I'm not a drinker." Can you see the difference between those 2 responses? The first response actually worked from the outside in terms of our 3 layers of behavioral change. And that's because that person said, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit," which means they still identify as somebody who drinks, and their actions and their outcomes are what's coming to the top of their mind as, I need to try and quit drinking because I'm a drinker. Whereas the person who said, "No thanks, I don't drink," has already identified as somebody who doesn't drink. So naturally the action follows that they would not drink because they are not a drinker. It's a bit of a subtle distinction, but I hope that makes it very clear to you that starting from this kind of inner stronghold of your identity you want to achieve actually naturally leads to those changes that you want to accomplish. So to sum that all up, the general idea is that we want to create identity-based habits as opposed to outcome-based habits. So as we go through the 4 laws, think about who you want to be financially, and then naturally those actions should kind of present themselves to you as something that that person would do on a regular basis. The first law operates in the cue stage of the habit formation process. So to form a good habit, we want to make the cue of that habit as obvious as possible. And for bad habits that we want to stop, we want to make this cue pretty much invisible. And the cue is the thing that essentially triggers the desire to accomplish that particular habit. And the most common 2 cues are time and place. For example, let's say I walk to work every day, and let's say normally at about 8:30 a.m. I walk by a Starbucks, and then I proceed to go and buy an expensive coffee. So in this case, time and place is the cue, because time of 8:30 a.m. is going to act as that trigger, as well as the place of being near a Starbucks. This then triggers the craving for coffee. So to eliminate this habit of drinking expensive coffee, the idea is that we would want to replace this established cue with something else. So for example, I still have to walk to work every morning, but maybe instead at 8:30 a.m., I open up my phone and I put on a finance podcast to help me learn more about personal finance. And at the same time, I make sure to walk maybe a slightly different route to get to work so I don't go by the Starbucks. So now we've done a few things. We've basically replaced this trigger. When it turns 8:30 a.m., I have this craving in my mind to get a coffee. We want to replace that cue with something else that's actually going to be beneficial for us. So we repeatedly at 8:30 a.m. start a financial podcast. And what this will do is it'll basically rewrite this association in your mind that you formerly had with a craving for coffee, that it'll actually begin to form a craving for a financial podcast. And by taking a different route to work, we are avoiding the place that's going to trigger that cue for caffeine. And so ultimately, your brain will come up with these new mental associations with this habit that's actually going to be positive for you. You've made Starbucks invisible, so your cue won't trigger for it. And then to make your new habit obvious, this new habit of listening to a podcast, what you could even do is, load your podcast up the night before, set your phone in a really obvious place that you're going to grab it on your way out before you head out on your walk to work. And that way you've designed your environment for success to A, help you save money in the mornings, and B, improve your knowledge of personal finance. The second law operates in the craving stage of the habit process. So once a cue has been triggered, then our brains begin craving something that's a part of the habit. And you know what's really interesting? Studies have shown that our brains get most excited about the anticipation of something. They don't actually get that excited about the accomplishment of something. Think about something that you really wanted. You were super excited leading up to it, right? But then what happened once you actually got it? You were excited for maybe a moment, but then it quickly went away and you were like, yeah, kind of over it now. This is why we need to hijack the anticipation part so that we can form good habits. And the way that we do this is by doing something called habit bundling. And essentially what that means is we take something that we really want to do and we pair it with something that we have to do. For example, let's say you really wanted to play some video games this weekend, get some Warzone going with the boys. Well, what you could do is you could do something like maybe say, okay, So I really want to play these video games, but I want to bundle this with something that's going to be very good for me. So maybe you could do something like say, okay, every time I play video games, I'm going to contribute $50 to my investment account, or pick whatever amount of money is going to work with you. That way, you can begin to associate in your mind this excitement that you feel towards playing some Warzone with your friends. Your brain will begin to associate that same excitement with contributing whatever amount of money, $50, whatever, to your investment account, because you've bundled these habits together and hijacked this anticipation, excitement part of the basically habit process. Play your video games and get rich. That's living the dream. The third law operates in the response stage of the habit process. So therefore, we want to make our responses as easy as possible for good habits we want to create or maintain, and we want to make bad habits have as hard of a response as possible. This is super important because research done on habit formation has shown that repetition is the key to forming good habits. It's not about time spent doing something. So for example, let's say that I was trying to learn how to play guitar, and maybe somebody would say something like, I've been playing guitar for 1 year. But then you have somebody who's only been playing for 3 months. Who do you think is going to be better at guitar? Well, you might naturally think probably the person who's been playing for 1 year, right? But what if they've practiced way less than that person who's only been playing for 3 months? It's all about repetition. It's not about the time spent overall. Our brains follow the path of least resistance to accomplishing a goal. So that means we need to remove all barriers and headaches in our way from actually accomplishing it. So when we're talking about financial goals, fortunately, we can leverage technology to do a lot of this for us. We can set up our banking to be as automatic as possible. We can set up automatic transfers from different accounts to one another. For example, maybe from your checkings to your savings account. So that way you're saving money whether you like it or not. The less you have to log into your banking, the less buttons you have to press, the less mental math you have to do to figure out what you actually want to do with your money, the better. Automation is the locking in of future benefits today. And for bad habits that you want to drop, you can have a lot of fun with this, because you can throw as many roadblocks, as many headaches, all this crap in front of you when you're trying to accomplish a bad habit. Like, make it ridiculous so that if you start trying to, get towards this bad habit that you keep repeating, you just run into all these problems and you're like, oh my God, like, I never want to do that again. That was terrible. Have some fun. Set up some systems to make those good habits so easy and effortless, and those bad ones just ridiculously difficult to actually do. Finally, we have our last law, which operates in the reward stage of the habit process. So for good habits, after we've accomplished them, we want to feel so good. We want to be like, yes, I love that. And then for bad habits, we want to be sitting there thinking to ourselves, that sucked. Why the heck did I even do that in the first place? The problem with making it satisfying, particularly for financial habits, is that our brain prefers instant gratification. And when it comes to money, generally the only way we get instant gratification is when we spend money, whereas things like saving and investing are more long-term oriented things. So our brain has a hard time wrapping around those concepts. So how do we flip this? How do we apply instant gratification to things like saving and investing? Well, one of the things that I do is my banking, particularly my high interest savings account, allows me to set savings goals. And you should be able to do this too with a lot of different banking options out there. So by setting this savings or investing goal, I can see this clear bar on the landing page of my particular account that shows me exactly where I am in relation to my goal. And when I make progress, I can see the bar increasing. And on top of that, I get emails to let me know that I'm progressing towards my goal. there's a bunch of different ways that this progress is very obvious, and that's the key. Our brains love progress. We love seeing results. We love seeing that little bit of an increase and making it very clear to ourselves. So that's something that I would really encourage you to do, is make your progress extremely obvious so that you'll love to see it. It provides you with that quick hit of instant gratification when you do make that progress, and it's moving you towards that long-term goal. So that was it for this video. I hope you found it really helpful. I really encourage you to use this video as kind of like a, bookmark it and return back to it throughout the year, because I know a lot of this information can be kind of maybe dense, can be a bit confusing, but I think the more you go through it and the more you try and apply it to your current life right now, the more you will see the value in it. And I know that it's been super helpful for me throughout my life, and I really hope that it can be helpful for you as well, especially in this new year of 2021, when it's kind of this year of renewal. And I really hope the best for you in this new year. So yeah, hope you found it helpful. Thanks so much for watching, and see you soon.